A solitary wind sweeps across the undulating fields of southern France, carrying with it the damp perfume of earth freshly kissed by morning mist. The soil is soft beneath unseen roots, yielding to the subtle pressure of time itself, a quiet witness to centuries of human toil. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolls, each reverberation slicing through the silence like a solemn heartbeat, echoing across the valleys where Neolithic ancestors once carved their lives into the very ground we now tread. It is a sound both mournful and sacred, bridging the gap between past and present, as if the land itself remembers the hands that shaped it. Beneath the surface, hidden from the eyes of the casual passerby, lie fragments of a forgotten settlement. Stone walls, long since crumbled to dust, have surrendered to the steady encroachment of moss and roots. Pottery shards, some jagged and sharp, others smooth with centuries of erosion, lie scattered like remnants of broken stories. Each tool, each fragment, each faint imprint in hardened clay whispers a tale of human existence, of survival, of toil, of fleeting triumphs and inevitable losses. The archaeologists move carefully among these echoes, their brushes delicate wands, uncovering with reverent patience the footprints of lives once lived with urgency and fragility. The burial pit lies in silence, a hollowed cavity in the earth, its presence known only to those who seek the secrets of the past. Within, skeletal remains rest in a grim tableau. Broken bones tell of battles fought without mercy, of lives ended in violence, of captives whose final moments were marked by fear and despair. Skull fragments bear the scars of blunt instruments. Forearms display the cruel torque of bondage. These are not mere remnants of flesh and bone. They are a testament to suffering, to resilience, to the stark reality of life millennia ago. The silence of the pit is heavy, a palpable presence that presses against the chest of anyone who gazes upon it. One can almost hear the echoes of screams, the clatter of weapons, the whispered prayers of those abandoned to fate. Sunlight begins to filter through the drifting clouds, striking the fields in uneven swathes of gold and shadow. Dust motes dance in the beams like tiny specters, as if the air itself remembers the movements of the ancestors who once labored here. The wind shifts, rustling through tall grasses, through the scattered remnants of oak and ash, and carries with it the faint, iron-laden scent of old blood. Every artifact uncovered is a portal, a shard of a memory, a vessel of a life, a fragment of civilization slowly being coaxed from the earth. A broken clay bowl might have held food for a family. A flint blade could have been a tool or a weapon of desperation. Each piece invites the mind to reconstruct the scene, to imagine the warmth of a fire in a wooden hut, the murmurs of conversation, the shuffling of feet over trodden earth. The pit, however, remains the most haunting of discoveries. Here, history is visceral, cannot be romanticized. The bodies are contorted in ways that speak of struggle, of resistance, of pain too profound to forget. Archaeologists handle the bones with trembling hands, acutely aware that they are touching what once was flesh and blood, flesh that laughed, ached, loved, and feared. The eyes that now only exist as hollow sockets once surveyed the horizon, searching for enemies or allies. The teeth, yellowed with age and decay, once gnawed sustenance from hard grains or roasted meat. There is a stark poetry in the brutality, the realization that life and death, joy and terror, were never far apart in this world. As the day wears on, the sun arcs across the sky, casting long shadows that creep across the fields like fingers of memory. Each shadow seems to cling to the earth, reluctant to release the stories it holds. The wind carries the faint chatter of the archaeologists, their voices hushed, careful, as though loud sound might disturb the delicate narrative embedded in the soil. They pause often, leaning close to examine a chipped tool, a fragment of bone, the faint outline of a post hole marking the corner of a long-gone dwelling. Every discovery, no matter how small, feels monumental. They are archaeologists of not just matter, but of humanity itself, piecing together lives that once shimmered with the same fragile vitality that surrounds them now. In the hush of late afternoon, the landscape begins to shift. The sun dips lower, bathing the fields in molten amber and stretching the shadows into elongated fingers that touch the earth like reluctant memories. The wind carries a whisper of cold, hinting at the coming night, at the timeless cycles of day and darkness, of birth and death. Even as the pit is filled with the careful measurements, photographs, and cataloging of discovery, the land seems to breathe, almost mournfully, mourning the loss of its inhabitants yet holding their memory close. There is a moment, brief and weightless, when the wind dies down. The world seems suspended, caught between the pulse of the present and the heartbeat of the past. The remnants of broken pottery, flint blades, and battered bones lie in a tableau that defies the years. They speak not only of death but of resilience, the stubborn will to carve a life into the earth, to plant, to build, to survive. And in this stillness, it becomes clear that the land itself is a keeper of memory. Every furrowed field, every gnarled tree, every rustling leaf bears silent witness to the ephemeral lives that once passed this way. As twilight descends, the horizon softens into a haze of violet and rose. The wind, returning with a gentler sigh, carries the scent of damp earth and fading sun, mingling with the faint metallic tang of memory. The church bell tolls once more, distant and echoing, threading through the shadows, a reminder that while centuries may erase the visible marks of human life, the stories persist, etched into the very fabric of the world. In the fading light, the burial pit is left behind, a quiet monument to the suffering and endurance of those who came before. And as the first stars puncture the darkening sky, the land seems to whisper, inviting reflection, remembrance, and respect. It is a voice that transcends time, murmuring of civilizations long hidden beneath the surface, of battles and betrayals, of the fragile beauty of human existence. Those who walk these fields now may never hear the voices of the past clearly, but they can feel their presence, woven into the soil, the wind, the fading light. The past is not dead. It is a shadow, a pulse, a memory stirring just beneath the surface, calling the living to remember, to honor, to learn. And so, as night claims the fields and the stars watch silently from above, the story of this ancient settlement lingers in the mind like smoke, diffused yet persistent, shaping the understanding of what it means to live, to endure, and ultimately, to leave a mark upon the world. A dense mist clings to the rolling hills of Denmark, where the countryside sleeps under a veil of morning gray. The wind threads through ancient pines, carrying with it the faint, pungent scent of earth turned over and roots torn from their centuries-long slumber. Here, beneath this quiet expanse, the bones of the past lie waiting, buried in a ritual silence that has endured for more than 1,000 years. A team of archaeologists moves slowly across the ground, their trowels and brushes whispering against the soil as though afraid to wake what should remain at rest. Every scrape and sweep releases the smell of damp moss, of clay rich with memory, of history preserved in layers of dust and decay. The first fragment emerges, a shard of ceramic, glazed faintly with colors that have survived the erosion of time. Its edges are sharp, yet fragile, a relic that speaks of hands long since stilled, shaping clay over a hearth fire while the northern seas roared beyond the horizon. Each piece uncovered is a voice from another age, a coin stamped with a king's mark, glinting faintly despite centuries of burial, a string of pearls, small and luminous, threading a story of wealth and aesthetic sensibility. These treasures, though silent, hum with human intent, desire, devotion, and the quiet assertion of status even in death. Among the finds, a small box draws particular attention. Its wood has darkened, veins etched like the lines of a weathered map. Inside lies a treasure almost impossibly delicate. Threads of gold, intricately woven and preserved against the relentless march of time. They gleam with a light that seems alive, catching the dim sunlight filtering through the mist, as if mocking the centuries that have passed. Whoever was buried here commanded such craftsmanship, such devotion, that the very earth could not erase it. The burial is no ordinary grave. It is a statement, an offering, a passage into both memory and legend. As the excavation deepens, patterns begin to emerge. The arrangement of artifacts suggests not mere accumulation, but deliberate intention. Every item seems chosen, placed with care. Ceramics to honor daily life, coins to mark passage or power, pearls to signify beauty, and gold thread to weave the intangible connection between this world and whatever lies beyond. One can almost hear the faint echoes of chants or prayers, the soft rustle of ceremonial robes, the quiet reverence of those who stood watch over their fallen. The air, thick with the scent of pine and loam, carries a solemnity that weighs upon the shoulders of the living as they bear witness to these remnants of the dead. The burial site belongs to a time when the Vikings ruled the northern seas, when their ships, sleek, black, and serpent-headed, cut through icy waters, bringing both terror and tribute. It is easy to imagine the individual here, noble, perhaps feared, certainly revered. Their life was intertwined with the tides, with the whims of gods and men alike. And in death, the same complexity persists. These artifacts are more than material wealth. They are symbols, bridges between mortal life and the spiritual world, tangible proof of the beliefs and priorities of a society often reduced to stories of raiding and conquest. With each carefully lifted fragment, the story of this Viking nobility becomes more intricate. The ceramics, once used to serve food in a hall filled with the roar of kin and the clash of iron, now speak of domestic rituals that were just as sacred as the violence beyond the walls. Coins hint at commerce and tribute. Threads of gold suggest devotion or divine favor. Pearls whisper of refinement and aesthetic cultivation. Together, they paint a portrait of a civilization deeply conscious of both worldly wealth and spiritual obligation, intertwining the two in a ceremonial dance that demanded precision, reverence, and, above all, legacy. The act of excavation is itself a meditation on time. Fingers brush away centuries of soil, revealing objects that were intended never to be disturbed. And yet, in their disturbance, these relics reclaim a voice. A coin glints, a pearl catches light, a gold thread curves like a flame revived from ashes. Rain lashes the tents, each droplet a tiny hammer on stretched canvas, turning the ground beneath into a mire that claims boots, legs, and patience alike. Soldiers move like shadows, hunched figures whose faces are maps of hunger and fear, hands gripping spears that feel heavier with every step. Mud squelches beneath them, sucking at leather and bone, whispering of the slow, relentless passage of suffering. Somewhere in the distance, the smoke of burning towns coils into the sky, a dark serpent carrying the cries of women hiding behind veils of grief, of children pressed into corners, of fathers who will never return. A sergeant kneels in the mire, offering a piece of bread so stale it cracks under his fingers. Trembling hands receive it, a gift heavy with gratitude and shame, swallowed not for taste but for survival. Laughter, bitter and dry, rises from the men, mingling with curses that drip into the mud like molten iron. Rats scurry, small and fearless, competing for scraps discarded in haste, and the soldiers glance at them, momentarily sharing in a grim respect for creatures who survive without shame or sorrow. A boy soldier hides a pebble in his palm, a token of imagined wealth, imagining the day he will see the sun warm his face without frost cracking his lips. His eyes, wide and damp, reflect not only fear but the fragile tendrils of hope that cling even here, in the wasteland of his youth. Around him, horses cough and snort, dragging harnesses through mud, their eyes hollow yet watchful, mirrors of the exhaustion etched into every human face. Their breath steams in the cold, a mist mingling with the rain, as if the world itself exhales sorrow in unison. The captain raises his hand, a silent signal that pierces the storm. Men obey, not out of strategy but drawn forward by duty, by fear, by the invisible tether of loyalty and dread. Lanterns flicker, casting fractured light across frost-laden helmets, illuminating the glint of tears unspilled, a quiet testament to a pain too deep for words. A rope sways gently from a broken gallows nearby, an unspoken emblem of justice and mortality entwined, its slow rhythm in the wind a morbid heartbeat, echoing the fragility of life in a world governed by iron and mud. Each footfall is a drumbeat in the march of despair, a rhythm punctuated by the groan of wagons, the squeal of harnesses, the whispered prayers of men who speak to gods they are unsure exist. Memory clings to them like the mud to their boots. They carry the weight of what has been lost. Homes reduced to ash, families scattered like leaves in a storm, comrades whose names are now only ghosts murmuring from the darkness. Guilt threads through them, a cold wire cutting beneath ribs, reminding each that survival is often a betrayal, that every step forward is at the expense of someone left behind. The wind gathers, slicing across faces, tugging at cloaks and tunics, carrying the scent of smoke, wet earth, and iron. A soldier stumbles, swallowed momentarily by the mud, and a hand shoots out, steadying him. No words are exchanged. There is no need. In this world, a touch can be the most intimate act, a shared acknowledgement of the torment that binds them all. Around them, the forest shudders in the storm, trees bent like old men under the weight of rain, branches creaking as if whispering secrets of battles past, of kingdoms lost, of men who never returned home. Night approaches like a slow tide, and with it comes a deeper silence, broken only by the distant crackle of fires or the occasional scream carried on the wind. Men press forward, their eyes hollow, yet alive with a brittle hope that one day their suffering will be recognized, honored, remembered. In each frozen breath, each shiver racked by cold, there is a thread of defiance, a stubborn refusal to let despair claim the entirety of their spirit. In the quiet moments, when the wind dies to a whisper and the rain softens its assault, soldiers glimpse their own reflection in puddles, the distorted mirror of themselves staring back. Mud-smeared, hollow-eyed, yet enduring. They see, in each other, the same fear, the same longing, the same unspoken question. Will this end? Will the frost and fire ever give way to a dawn that is ours alone? The boy grips his pebble tighter, imagining it as a coin, a symbol of a world beyond this march, beyond the relentless grind of mud and sorrow. Perhaps, he thinks, it will buy him a life he can recognize as his own, where laughter is not a bitter echo, where food is more than a morsel, where the wind warms instead of cuts. Around him, men trudge on, shadows of ghosts who walk because the earth beneath demands it, because duty and fear leave no alternative. Horses, dripping and exhausted, shift in the mire, nostrils flaring as they inhale the storm, each movement a testament to endurance. Lanterns sway in the half-light, flickering over faces that have known more suffering than joy, over hands that have held both spear and friend in equal measure, over eyes that have stared into fire and come away unbroken. The captain's hand rises again, calling the men forward into the night, into the unknown, into the rhythm of survival that neither promises safety nor mercy. They move as one, a river of shadows, carrying with them memory, guilt, hope, and the brittle understanding that life and death are bound not by fate, but by each choice, each step, each heartbeat. The rope from the gallows sways still, a silent witness to the fragility and weight of existence, a reminder that justice, like mercy, can be as fleeting as the flame of a lantern in the wind. As the storm thickens, the soldiers march on. Their silence speaks louder than any cry. Each footfall presses into the mud, imprinting history in a language only the earth understands. They carry more than hunger. They carry the lives of those who came before, the shadows of those who will not follow, and a fragile hope that somewhere, beyond frost and fire, there will be recognition, remembrance, and perhaps a dawn that does not bite with cold. And in that cold, wet, endless night, the soldiers move forward, not because the path is clear, but because to stop would mean surrender, to the storm, to the mud, to the sorrow, and surrender is a luxury this war will not allow. Beneath the soft hum of modern Vienna, where children chase a ball across green fields and neighbors stroll without a thought for what lies beneath their feet, the earth has surrendered a secret long buried in silence. A mass grave has emerged from the soil, revealing the bones of nearly 150 Roman soldiers. Their skeletons lie in uneasy repose, arms and legs frozen as if mid-struggle, faces turned to a sky they will never see. Around them, the soil clings stubbornly to the contours of their bones, whispering of a time when empires fought not for survival, but for glory, for borders drawn in blood and smoke. The air here carries the weight of centuries. One imagines the soft crunch of leaves under the sandals of soldiers, the distant clang of swords, the harsh bark of centurions giving orders that must have seemed eternal to young men far from home. Beneath the modern city, a Roman fort once stood Vindobona, a bastion at the empire's northern edge, a place where the walls were strong, but the hearts of men often faltered. These men, now skeletal, were guardians of that fragile line. Their graves tell stories not of triumph, but of vulnerability. Wounds etched in bone speak of hand-to-hand combat, of shields raised against axes and spears, of young lives extinguished under the roar of a world determined to keep them fighting. Archaeologists move carefully among the remains, their gloves brushing against the ancient soil, tools gently lifting fragments of a life once lived. Each artifact, a rusted helmet, a bent sword, a fragment of armor, is a key to understanding the daily grind of soldiers stationed at the empire's edge. They imagine the cold bite of winter upon these men, the sting of frost on exposed skin, the endless march along roads that led into forests thick with the whispers of enemy tribes. Some skeletons show signs of disease, of malnutrition, of the relentless strain of duty. Others bear wounds so severe they could only have been inflicted in the chaos of battle. Skulls split by blows, ribs fractured by relentless strikes, teeth broken in desperate defense. It is a scene that refuses to be silent. The grave is not simply a place of death. It is a narrative carved into earth and bone. The soldiers were buried with their weapons, the tools of their labor and their undoing. These swords and daggers, once raised in defense of Rome, now rest with them as relics of a forgotten war. Armor, corroded and misshapen, clings to their frames as though trying to shield them still. In this quiet cemetery beneath a bustling city, there is no trumpeting of victory, no inscriptions of heroism, only the stark, intimate truth. Men who lived, fought, and died far from the lands that bore them. To stand here is to feel the pull of history not as a story, but as an experience. One can imagine the soldiers' final moments, the sudden clash of enemies on the horizon, the desperate push of comrades in the mud. Perhaps there was a fleeting glance toward the sky, a silent prayer, or a curse hurled into the wind. The battlefield may have been chaotic, merciless. Yet there is a rhythm to the violence, a terrible order dictated by discipline, by strategy, by the unyielding demands of the empire. Each fractured bone is a testament to that final, fleeting struggle, a mark of humanity in the midst of organized carnage. Even as centuries have passed, the bones speak. They tell of wounds healed too late, of companions lost, of a discipline that demanded bravery even when fear gripped the heart. They whisper of camaraderie forged in the mud of foreign lands, of letters never sent, of homes never returned to. Beneath the football field, in the quiet hum of modern life, the echoes of armor and sweat linger. The ground remembers the cries of the dying, the clatter of swords, the shuffle of tired feet across frozen terrain. These men, once anonymous soldiers of Rome, now have voices through their remains, telling the stories that history textbooks can barely hint at. The discovery also reveals the fragility of empire, the thin line between control and chaos. Vindobona was more than stone walls. It was a human network of loyalty, fear, and unspoken sacrifice. Soldiers stationed here were not mere cogs in an imperial machine. They were flesh and blood, individuals with dreams, regrets, and fears. Their deaths, now revealed in unassuming graves beneath a soccer field, remind us that every empire, no matter how vast, stands upon the lives of the expendable, the brave, the overlooked. They were men whose names are lost, whose voices were silenced by time, yet whose presence continues to speak, now louder than ever. As the sun sets over Vienna, casting long shadows across the modern city, the site of the grave becomes a place of reflection. Children's laughter mingles with the ghosts of the past, a reminder that life endures even above tragedy. Archaeologists close their notebooks, brushing earth from gloves, contemplating the insights gained. The toll of constant warfare, the endurance of human spirit, the fleeting nature of martial glory. Yet beyond these lessons lies a more haunting truth, that even the mightiest armies are composed of men, fragile and mortal, whose lives can be ended by a single spear, a single moment of misfortune. The field itself, ordinary and vibrant by day, holds a memory that defies the mundane. Beneath the surface, the bones of Roman soldiers rest silently, a somber chorus of sacrifice and struggle. They call upon us to witness, to imagine, to feel the weight of history pressing against the present. In the echo of their deaths, one senses the cost of empire, the fleeting nature of honor, the unyielding grip of mortality. The soldiers are gone, but in the soil and shadows, they remain, eternal in their silence, haunting the spaces between past and present, war and peace, life and oblivion. And as night descends, the city lights flicker against the veil of darkness, illuminating the ordinary streets above extraordinary lives lost. One can almost hear the distant clash of swords, the whispered orders of centurions, the shouts of men fighting not for themselves, but for a world that has long forgotten them. The field, now quiet, becomes a bridge, a portal into the lives of those who bore the weight of empire on their shoulders. In the stillness, we are left with a question that will linger beyond the archaeologist's notes, beyond the historical analysis. What is the price of glory, and who truly remembers those who pay it? A cold wind scoured the hills of Romania, whispering across the tall grasses and stirring the mist that clung to the earth like a shroud. Amid the undulating slopes, shadowed and remote, the ground rose in unnatural mounds, some towering 9 meters, carved carefully by hands long vanished. Each tumulus seemed alive, breathing with the weight of countless forgotten lives, a silent testimony to a people whose names had been swallowed by centuries. Here, over 200 souls rested, buried in the embrace of the earth, their stories pressed beneath layers of soil and stone, waiting for the patient hands of discovery to unravel them. The first archaeologists arrived as dawn broke, their figures moving like ghosts over the dew-drenched grass. Each step disturbed centuries of silence, sending small clouds of dust into the pale morning light. As the trowels touched the ground, the air seemed to thicken, heavy with memory and unseen eyes. Pottery shards, fractured and worn, glinted like amber in the sun. Iron tools, dulled by time, still carried the weight of labor and survival. Jewelry, delicate and ornate, whispered of hands that once trembled with care, fingers that adorned the dead to honor them, to guard them in the afterlife. These burial mounds were more than graves. They were monuments to collective memory. The placement of each body, the arrangement of artifacts, spoke of a society that knew the power of remembrance. Men, women, and children were laid side by side, their final resting places echoing bonds that had outlasted the passage of decades, centuries, perhaps millennia. To gaze upon these mounds was to witness a devotion to the past so profound that even time itself could not sever it. As the archaeologists dug deeper, they began to unravel patterns. Some graves were modest, simple, a pot here, a tool there, while others glimmered with the care of meticulous preparation. The wealth of objects suggested social hierarchies, distinctions between lives lived and deeds remembered. Yet, even in disparity, there was a shared language of ritual, a careful choreography of death. Each body was a story, each artifact a verse in a poem written in clay and metal, a poem sung silently through the ages. One mound, taller and broader than the rest, revealed a chamber sealed with enormous stones. Inside, the remains of a leader were laid with extraordinary care. His bones were accompanied by finely crafted weapons, a necklace of amber beads, and pottery painted with intricate symbols, the marks of someone who had commanded respect, perhaps fear. Around him, other burials were arranged, suggesting a retinue, a household, or perhaps a guard even in death. There was strategy here, intention. This was not merely burial, but a careful preservation of memory, a declaration that some lives, and their power, must endure. The deeper they excavated, the more the land seemed to speak. There were traces of fire, pits where offerings had once burned, their smoke long vanished but leaving faint stains on the stones. Tiny carvings etched into ceramics hinted at a world rich with belief and symbolism, where life and death were intertwined in ritual, where the soul's journey was carefully guided by those left behind. Children's graves, marked with simple tokens, contrasted against the grandeur of the elite. Yet all were given attention, a sign that this society understood the delicate thread of existence, fragile yet sacred. Rain began to fall, gentle at first, then heavier, turning the soil into a thick, clinging mud. The mounds seemed to sigh under the weight of the storm, their silhouettes blurred against the gray sky. Within this silence, the archaeologists paused, trowels suspended in midair, as if the land itself demanded reverence. It was not just the bones that told the story, but the earth, the wind, the faint rustle of leaves, all part of a narrative older than any written record. With each layer removed, the society that had thrived here emerged in fragments, delicate yet defiant. They were farmers and hunters, artisans and warriors, dreamers and believers. Their lives were shaped by the rhythm of seasons, by the struggle against hunger, by alliances and rivalries, by the certainty of mortality. And in death, they transformed their fear and devotion into enduring monuments. The tumuli were maps of memory, guiding the living in understanding of their past, their community, and their place in a world vast and often unforgiving. The artifacts spoke not just of survival but of sophistication. Patterns in the jewelry, the careful shaping of tools, the symbolic markings on pottery, all revealed a culture of artisanship and aesthetic sensibility. There was ingenuity here, a comprehension of materials and form that belied the assumption of a primitive existence. They had not only survived, they had flourished, leaving behind evidence of social structures, of governance, of spiritual complexity. Each mound was a library, each grave a chapter, each shard a sentence in a story of human ambition, love, and loss. Even the layout of the mounds spoke of unity and planning. They were clustered in a deliberate manner, suggesting a shared vision, a community bound not merely by geography but by belief. Perhaps each mound represented a family, a clan, or a social echelon, but collectively, they formed a sacred landscape, a tangible connection between the living and the dead. As the archaeologists mapped the site, they began to see the invisible threads linking life and ritual, a network of care and remembrance stretching across generations. As the day faded into dusk, the mounds glowed in the last light, shadows stretching long and silent. The excavation halted, the tools laid down, the air thick with the weight of unseen hands guiding the past into the present. For a moment, it was possible to imagine the world as it had been. Fires flickering in the evening, figures moving among the fields, voices rising in song or prayer, a life lived in consonance with the earth and the sky. And then, slowly, the land reclaimed its quiet, the wind carrying with it the whispers of those long gone, their stories now breathing again, fragile yet enduring. This site, remote and untamed, challenges everything we thought we knew of pre-Roman Europe. It is a revelation, a sophisticated society, steeped in ritual, hierarchy, and spiritual depth, whose existence has been nearly erased by time. Yet in these mounds they live again, in the careful hands of archaeologists, in the silent testimony of artifacts, in the wind that dances across the hills. Each grave is a call to remember, a reminder that the past is never truly gone, only waiting for the eyes and hearts brave enough to witness it. And as night settles over the hills, a single torch flickers against the darkness, casting light on the stones, on the earth, on the lives long buried but not forgotten. The tumuli stand as guardians of memory, their secrets whispering through the mist, asking questions that have no easy answers. Who were they? What did they believe? And most haunting of all, what can we learn from their devotion, their rituals, and the enduring power of human memory? The hills fall silent once more, but the echoes linger, and tomorrow, beneath the soil, new hands will uncover fragments of lives that refuse to be forgotten, and the story of this ancient civilization will stretch its arms forward into history once again. The sun strikes the plains of Extremadura with a relentless, golden glare, painting the earth in hues of ochre and amber. Heat ripples across the land, shimmering off the soil like the breath of a restless spirit. Here, where the wind carries the faint scent of time and dust, a hidden world sleeps beneath the surface. Until now, as workers turned the soil for a modern solar energy project, the earth itself seemed to exhale, revealing secrets buried for almost 5 millennia. There, emerging from the layers of clay and stone, lay the remnants of a fortress so vast, so meticulously constructed, it commands awe even in ruin. Cortijo Lobato, a citadel of the Copper Age, stretching across more than 13,000 square meters, ringed by 3 concentric walls and punctuated by 25 towers that once bristled with the vigilance of watchful eyes. The air above the site seems to hum with memory, whispering of long-forgotten threats and the hands that built these defenses. It is not merely stone that speaks here, but strategy. The walls, thick and deliberate, curve and fold with precision, creating layers of protection that would have turned intruders into prey for arrow and spear. Moats carved into the earth trap and slow, their still water now reflecting the stark blue sky. Each feature, each mound, each tower, each trench, tells of a society acutely aware of the fragility of life, of the constant shadow of violence lurking beyond the horizon. Archaeologists tread carefully through the fortress, trowels and brushes in hand, dust motes catching the sunlight like tiny sparks of the past. Every fragment of pottery, every chipped flint arrowhead, becomes a story. And there, amid the ruins, the tale darkens. Evidence of a violent end lies scattered across the site. Walls blackened with fire, stones cracked and overturned, the remnants of what must have been a desperate struggle. Arrowheads, still embedded in the earthen walls and scorched timbers, point to an assault, a sudden onslaught that shattered the rhythms of daily life. One can almost hear it. The shriek of alarm, the clash of wooden shields, the hiss of arrows slicing through air thick with smoke. Within these walls, families and warriors must have fought side by side, a fleeting unity against forces beyond their control. Yet even in ruin, the fort endures not as a home, but as a testament to resilience, to human ingenuity in the face of mortal fear. But time's layers do not end with the Copper Age. Buried amidst these ancient stones lies a different story, a puzzle from a later epoch, echoing with violence of another kind. In the shadow of the fortress, archaeologists uncover a burial unlike any other. A Roman soldier, laid face down in the earth, dagger pressed to his back, feet severed as though to deny him passage to the afterlife. The desecration is deliberate, intimate, and chilling. Who did this? Why was he denied honor? His life erased from memory with such cruelty. The juxtaposition is stark. Here, a fortress built to guard against invaders, and here, the corpse of a man claimed by betrayal or shame. One civilization rising and falling, another imposing its own rules, each leaving behind only fragments of story, like whispers trapped in stone. Cortijo Lobato becomes a mirror of Extremadura's long, tumultuous history. A land shaped by survival, by conquest, by the unyielding human desire to endure, to assert dominion over both earth and fate. Walking among the walls, one senses the rhythm of lives long extinguished. The builder's hands left prints in mortar, the soldier's boots once pressed into the mud, and the victims of assault and betrayal lie hidden, their stories etched in silence. The fortress was not just a refuge, but a stage for courage and fear, for the mundane and the extraordinary. It was a place where alliances could be forged or shattered in an instant, where trust and suspicion coexisted in the same heartbeat. The sun dips lower, casting elongated shadows across the towers and trenches, turning the fortress into a labyrinth of light and dark. The wind rustles through the skeletal remains of walls, carrying with it a low, mournful whisper, as if the past itself were breathing. Every artifact recovered is a fragment of this breathing history. A broken pot, a rusted blade, a charred piece of timber. They speak not in words, but in echoes of pain, perseverance, and the quiet dignity of those who once called this place home. It is here that one sees the full measure of time's cruelty and indifference. The fortress, a pinnacle of human design and communal effort, eventually succumbed to fire and assault. The Roman soldier, a solitary figure buried dishonorably, reminds us that history is neither linear nor just. Extremadura's plains are littered with the traces of ambition and violence, of civilizations that rose with purpose only to be swallowed by the relentless passage of years. And yet, the earth does not erase. It conceals and preserves, offering us glimpses into a past that can never fully return, but can forever haunt the present. Standing on the sun-scorched earth, the scale of the discovery overwhelms. Cortijo Lobato is more than ruins. It is a dialogue across millennia, a confrontation with the fears, hopes, and desperate ingenuity of our ancestors. The walls may crumble, the towers may fall, and the fire may consume, yet the story endures, etched in stone, in bone, in the very soil beneath our feet. Each excavation reveals a heartbeat, each artifact a fragment of memory, each shadow a reminder of what was fought for and what was lost. And as the light fades, one cannot help but imagine the next chapter unfolding. Another layer of life, of conflict, of humanity pressing against the immutable forces of time. The plains are quiet now, but their silence is thick with remembrance. Beneath the soil, the ghosts of builders, defenders, and betrayed soldiers lie in wait, their stories unfinished, calling for the witness of those who dare to uncover them. The wind rises once more, carrying the scent of scorched earth and dry herbs, whispering across the remains of towers and walls. It speaks of survival and ruin, of honor denied and courage celebrated. Cortijo Lobato, in all its grandeur and tragedy, stands as a sentinel to the eternal dance between human ambition and the inexorable march of history. And as the shadows stretch, we are left with a question that will echo into the next revelation. In a land shaped by conquest and fire, who truly endures? A chill rises with the dawn mist over the rolling fields of central France. The earth, damp and yielding, exhales the scent of centuries long past. Here, beneath the soil, lie the silent witnesses of a world we can barely imagine. 28 stallions and 2 dogs, buried not as mere creatures of labor or sport, but as honored companions in a ritual older than memory. The soil had closed over them like a curtain, and for 2,000 years, the wind whispered only to itself, carrying secrets of loyalty, power, and devotion through the quiet countryside. The first unearthed skulls gleam pale against the tangle of roots. Each horse, male, roughly 6 years in age, rests with its head turned deliberately south. The dogs, smaller yet no less intentional, lie with heads facing west, as though listening for a signal beyond the horizon. Every angle, every placement, hints at a consciousness that transcends utility. These were not animals enslaved to toil. These were beings woven into the very tapestry of their people's lives, given a final gesture of respect, a bridge from the mortal to the sacred. Archaeologists brush the centuries from fragile bones, their hands trembling with the weight of history. Finger by finger, they trace the contours of ribs, the curvature of jaws, the subtle impressions of harnesses that may have once adorned these noble creatures. The meticulous care of the burials suggests ceremony, a ritualistic choreography known only to those who lived it. Here, in the undisturbed hush of the graves, one can imagine the quiet procession of men and women, the crackle of torches against the cool night, the murmured prayers spoken over the loyal beasts who had carried them through storms, battles, and the endless rhythm of daily life. It is not merely the act of burial that astonishes. It is the deliberate symmetry, the language written in the earth itself. South and west, directions chosen perhaps for reasons lost to time, now only whisper possibilities. Sun worship, cosmic alignment, or pathways to realms beyond the living. Even the age of the horses, clustered around 6 years, speaks of an understanding of vitality, of prime life cut short not by chance, but by intention. These were animals at the peak of strength, offered to the soil as vessels of memory and symbols of power. The field feels alive with echoes. Can one hear the pounding of hooves on dew-soaked grass, the panting of a faithful dog at the flank of its master? Perhaps these sounds were imagined, shadows cast by memory itself, but they are no less real for the centuries that separate us. In death, these animals became more than companions. They became witnesses to a society's values, living metaphors of loyalty, courage, and social standing. To honor them was to honor the life that pulsed through the village, the clan, the tribe that had raised them, fed them, and, in their final moments, revered them. Bones yield secrets in fragments. Isotopic analyses hint at distant origins. Some horses may have been traded or gifted, crossing regions, their fates intertwined with the ambitions of men. The dogs, loyal and vigilant, suggest guardianship in more than life. Their placement in death mirrors a protective instinct, a final watch over the resting herd. In the careful interment of these creatures, we sense a society that did not merely exist in the present but reached outward, seeking to define an enduring order, one in which human and animal shared a spiritual continuity. One can almost see them, in the quiet imagination that archaeology permits. A stallion's nostrils flaring in the dawn light, eyes reflecting the first streaks of sun, muscles taut and ready. A dog pads softly between the shadows of tents and longhouses, ears alert, senses stretched to every flicker of wind. These animals were participants in the rhythm of human life. Warriors' mounts, hunters' partners, symbols of wealth and status. Their deaths, and the care with which they were enshrined, suggest a society that saw in them reflections of its own ideals. Strength, fidelity, and a bridge to the unseen. The graves themselves are messages, left like riddles for those who would come centuries later. The southward gaze of the stallions may have followed the path of the sun, the great celestial wheel that governs growth, decay, and rebirth. The western glance of the dogs may have sought the fading light, the edge of the known world, or perhaps the threshold of death itself. Each orientation speaks of a cosmos perceived as alive, where life and death are gestures in a grand, sacred dance. Archaeologists find tools, remnants of ceremony, subtle traces of pigments that once adorned the burial site. And yet, even in these discoveries, much remains unseen. The whispers of human voices calling names, the rustle of fabric, the muted sobs of those left behind. Through the earth, these feelings seep forward across millennia, reminding us that ritual is not only an act but a dialogue, a conversation between the living and those who have passed into memory. We pause at the edge of the excavation, feeling the stillness of the fields, the weight of silence that has endured for 2,000 years. Here lies a narrative of devotion not written in stone or manuscript, but etched in the careful choreography of bones and soil. In honoring their animals, these ancient people honored themselves, recognizing that in loyalty, courage, and companionship, the boundaries between species dissolve. For a moment, the gap between past and present narrows. We glimpse a truth, that the human heart has always sought communion, that the stories we leave behind are as much about the lives we touch as the lives we live. And yet, questions linger. Why these horses? Why these dogs? Why this precise orientation, this age, this moment in time? Perhaps we will never know, but the questions themselves become part of the story, shaping how we remember and imagine. The graves offer no tidy conclusions, only a haunting, poetic testimony to a civilization that revered life in forms we are only beginning to understand. As the sun climbs higher, the mist lifts, and the field exhales again. The earth has kept its secret, but not forever. Bones lie exposed, yes, but they speak, softly, insistently, in the language of memory, loyalty, and reverence. The story of these animals is a story of a people, of the values they held, of the invisible threads that connect us to those who came before. In death, these creatures have become immortal, silent guides across centuries, reminding us that honor and devotion are not the province of humans alone. And so, beneath the vast, whispering skies of central France, we leave them once more to rest, their heads turned to the sacred directions, their presence still palpable in the trembling soil. Their story is a threshold, a delicate bridge to the next chapter. The lives of those who buried them, their society, and the rituals that wove together human and animal, earth and sky, the mortal and the divine. From the shadows of these graves, the next story begins to stir, of people, of belief, and of the fragile, enduring ties that bind us to all who share this world. A wind sweeps through the jagged hills of Corsica, carrying whispers of a time when the land was young, and human hands dared to shape eternity. In the half-light of dawn, shadows stretch across granite monoliths, their edges rough, yet deliberate, standing sentinel against the march of centuries. Here, in the remote folds of the island, a series of megalithic sites emerges from the earth, silent witnesses to a civilization long swallowed by time. The stones rise like frozen voices, speaking of devotion, of fear, of the need to leave a mark that even death could not erase. Among these ancient constructions, the alignment Dei Stantari commands both awe and unease. Two menhir statues, carved with hauntingly human features, gaze across the landscape as if guarding secrets no living soul may fully comprehend. Their faces, etched with the patience of countless days, convey a solemnity that chills the heart. Eyes deep and hollow, yet alive with intent, lips pressed in eternal contemplation. This is not mere stone. This is memory cast in granite, a testament to hands that labored tirelessly to channel the sacred into the permanent. Each chisel mark, each curve and line, carries the weight of belief, of ritual, of a society that saw the world not only as it was, but as it must be honored. The stones themselves tell a story beyond their form. Granite, brought here from distant quarries, speaks of networks of exchange, of journeys over land and sea, of a society interconnected in ways that defy our assumptions about the Bronze Age. These were not isolated people. They were traders, travelers, creators of a shared vision that spanned valleys and coasts. The effort to source, transport, and erect these monoliths hints at a community bound by purpose, each generation adding layers to a story that was never meant to end with them. It was a story carved in sweat and reverence, designed to endure far longer than flesh and bone. Archaeologists today trace the lines of these stones and uncover evidence of multiple phases of construction. Each addition, each rearrangement, hints at evolving beliefs, at ceremonies repeated, modified, and sanctified over decades. One can almost hear the chants of the Neolithic people, the rhythmic pounding of stone on stone, the collective breath of a community united in awe and ritual. The site was not static. It lived and breathed through the centuries, a sacred spine running through the heart of Corsica's rugged hills. And in this endurance, the alignment Dei Stantari whispers a quiet defiance against the erosion of memory, a defiance that still lingers in the rustling grass and the cold touch of granite under a rising sun. A few miles away lies the alignment de Renagju, where over 170 monoliths stretch in 4 imposing rows. Here, the scale overwhelms. Each stone, precise in its placement, marks a line of vision, a rhythm of intention. It is a city of giants, a field of deliberate thought, where the geometry of the human hand meets the chaos of nature. Standing among these stones, one feels both small and significant, a fleeting echo of the ancient hands that arranged these monoliths with care that bordered on the sacred. The rows, aligned with celestial patterns and the shifting seasons, suggest a people attuned to the cosmos, whose understanding of the heavens rivaled the mysteries of the earth. The grandeur of Renagju challenges our assumptions about prehistoric Corsica. Here is evidence not of simple survival, but of sophistication, of a culture that valued artistry and spirituality, that understood permanence and memory. The stones do not merely mark territory. They signify intention, hierarchy, and reverence. They suggest gatherings, rituals, and the careful stewardship of communal belief. In their shadow, the mundane disappears. The hunger, the labor, the fleeting violence of daily life gives way to something enduring, something transcendent. The megaliths are a dialogue across millennia, a reminder that even in an age we call primitive, humans dreamed and built with extraordinary vision. As the day wanes, the sun dipping behind distant peaks, the stones are transformed. Their surfaces glow with amber light, casting long shadows that stretch like fingers across the land. The wind carries the faint echo of ceremonies, the muted sounds of footsteps on grass, the whispers of voices long gone. And though centuries of history have passed, the intention embedded in these stones remains palpable, almost alive. They are more than monuments. They are thresholds between worlds, between the living and the dead, the known and the imagined. Standing before them, one cannot help but wonder. What drove a people to invest such labor and faith in the cold, unyielding stone? Was it fear, reverence, a yearning for immortality? In the quiet that follows, as night begins to gather, one senses the continuum of human existence stretching across the hills. The alignment di Stantari, the alignment de Renagju. They speak of resilience, devotion, and artistry, of the fragile beauty of human ambition. And somewhere in the distance, a shadow stirs, hinting at the next chapter of the story. The unfolding of civilizations yet to come, each echoing the whispers of the past. The stones remain, timeless and unyielding. Their silent watch a reminder that while people vanish, memory, carved in stone, endures.